Thank you so much, Riaz Saab, and I'm sure Lahore will obviously compete with Karachi in terms of the participation, and we are already seeing that the hall is absolutely full, and there are many people outside as well, and of course, I'm sure many others are also watching this live on Facebook as well. So some wonderful thoughts in terms of over 300 companies participating in this conference. And of course, what we are looking to do is bring the intellectual power of the 300 companies into our conference as well, through your question and answers, and of course through your feedback that will come to us later on. So now let's actually start the training bit of today. Like I said, you need to sort of detach your mind a little bit to learn something new. जिस तरह कोई गाना सुनने से पहले ज़रूरी होता है कि आप अपने जहन से बाकी चीज़ें हटा दें, वरना कोई बहुत खूबसूरत गाना भी होगा और आप उसको एंजॉय नहीं कर सकेंगे. आज के हमारे जो स्पीकर्स हैं, उनकी बातें वो भी कुछ इसी तरह की चीज़ होंगी. So let's go to the keynote speaker. Mental model evolution. मैंने तो खैर थोड़ी सी बात की थी in terms of how we need to get ready for change, transform and reflect. But let's hear some industry champions who've actually been there, done that. Because during every phase of your career, there is a mental model evolution bit. The topic, the adaptive cruise control of competitive edge. Let me just introduce the keynote speaker, Mr. Saqib H. Shirazi, Chief Executive Officer and Group Director Strategic Planning, Atlas Honda Limited. Mr. Shirazi graduated from the Wharton School of Finance. No introduction about that required, I'm sure, before completing his master's from the Harvard Business School. It's always great to hear somebody from Harvard, and we don't get that opportunity too much. So let's actually try and absorb as much as we can. He has worked with the Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UFG Limited in Japan, and is the former CEO of Atlas Investment Bank Limited. At present, he is serving as a member on the board of Pakistan Petroleum Limited, Pakistan Cables Limited, and Cherad Cement. Previously, he was on the board of National Refinery, Sui Southern Gas, Perak Research and Development Foundation, and the Privatization Commission of Pakistan, which I think has got lots more work to do in Pakistan if you want to actually reduce the fiscal deficit and bring interest rates down again. So lots of work there as well. And he has also been on the board of Harvard Business School's Global Alumni and served as president for the year from 2006 to 2008. That's a lot of rich experience. So ladies and gentlemen, may I please request to put your hands together to greet Mr. Saqib H. Shirazi. Can I please request you to come on stage?
Thank you, Safi Saab. Chamdia Saab, the committee, friends in Lahore, thanks for the invitation again. It's always nice to come to this conference. The gentleman sitting next to me on the front row just informed me how this invitation was extended, and the fact that it took me less than 5 minutes to respond yes is, I think, not because of any other reason, but that I have a lot of respect for your profession. And I think but what the country needs is a lot more from your professionals. So this line of thought will remain. It's a great profession, but the country needs a lot more from you. So how can you evolve to help the state we're in? I want to start by, how does this, right. Is this big enough? Can people read this? Okay, so I'll have to read it out. So, even though chartered accountancy has a lot of subjects you need to learn to get your qualification, I personally feel that English literature is an important subject to learn from. And this quote is from a very famous book by Charles Dickens called A Tale of Two Cities. And I think if people here have not read this book, they must read this book. It begins with a quote which remains one of my favorite in terms of Pakistan description in some ways. What does it say? It says, this is the opening line of this book, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was an age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. Now, this one sentence is full of contradictions, right? On the one hand, there's light and there's darkness. On the one hand, there's hope and there's despair. My 25 years of Pakistan are encapsulated by this particular opening line of A Tale of Two Cities. Pakistan is a tale of two cities. If you want to look at it, you can criticize it and find nothing positive in Pakistan. We have seen, just in my 27 years since I've been back in Pakistan, more crises than any other country. When I first came back in early 90s, the rupee was 20 rupees. Today it's 120 rupees nearly. There was no sales tax. Sales tax was imposed 17%. When I came in, Ghulam Isa Khan Saab was for the first time handing over to Benazir the government. And from then on, we saw in a period of 10 years, nearly 4 or 5 political governments, 2, 3 caretaker governments, and every stage it felt like we were going backwards. But at the same time, I remember some amazing things happening. When I first arrived at the airport back from business school, my brother was at the airport to greet me. And he came with this strange-looking gadget. He held a briefcase in one hand, and the other hand, he had this Instaphone package. It was a phone he used to carry with him in his hand, which was bigger than his briefcase. And I said, what the hell is that? And he said, well, I need to have communication on the go, and the company now needs to reach out to me. So apparently I have to have this briefcase with me, which has this phone. I go, how much does it cost per call? He goes, oh my God, I dare not tell you, but it is 140 rupees a minute. So I don't really take any calls from this instrument, but I have to have it just in case of emergency. So I said, and so what is the cost of PTCL line? He goes, well, it's 55 rupees a minute. Right? So we had this briefcase at 120 to 140 rupees a minute, and PTCL at 55. And today, in that era of darkness, we had mobility take off, telephony take off, internet take off, and Pakistanis adopted, adapted, inculcated, learnt and relearnt. And as you know, at that time, when Mobilink really went after it, the rates came down to 5 rupees from 55. Now they're not even 2 rupees maybe, right? But what I'm trying to tell you is, in this era of darkness and despair, every level, Pakistan seems to have some hope somewhere. Whether it's the business front, whether it's our youth, whether it is some industry taking off. And our chairman often shares a slide with us, which I haven't got here. But the glass half empty slide is unbelievable. There's terrorism, there's no safety, law and order is bad, nobody pays taxes, nobody respects each other. एक ज़माना था रख रखाव बहुत होती थी FBR में, अब वो आपको जगह भी नहीं देते बैठने के लिए. आप अपने नाम से जाते थे तो आपके elders used to give you a legacy foot in. Now they ask you, who the hell are you? Right? I mean, things have changed. But
in that way, there's a lot of negativity. But on the positive side, through this era of darkness, one of the best periods we had was probably 2001 to 2007. Yusuf Abdullah at FBR, Prime Minister was the finance minister, and changes were made. When we interacted with the FBR, distance was created. You didn't have to interact. We made things simpler. Self-assessment came in. And then we had a rollback. So in our case, we are a tale of two cities. But if you look at Pakistan half full, the story is amazing. In 2001, Atlas Honda sold 60,000 motorcycles. This year, we just closed at 1160, 1,160,000. So is it our success? No, we were a participant in the success of this country. So I think this line I want to share with you, chartered accountants, please go keep reading a book. Read a chapter a night which is not to do with chartered accountancy. Okay? Because either history, you can learn more, or English, it can leave a mark in your heads. So, given that we're a tale of two cities, how do we adjust? So, today's topic, evolving mental models, frankly, I had no idea what that meant. I actually had to go to the internet to read about it, what it meant, and then I understood clearly that it's really trying to give a story of Pakistan in an emerging state from my perspective. So what's the story of Pakistan going forward? So the story of Pakistan is clearly, if we're at ground zero, we have grown 5% GDP per year over 70 years. That's pretty good. But we've also grown at greater than 3% in population growth over this period. So the net growth is probably not more than 1.5%, which is not enough to sustain us. The gap between population and GDP needs to be at least 3 to 4%. At least. So from a GDP perspective, we need to be nearer 7 and 8%. And from population growth perspective, we need to be less than 2. That's the perfect place to be. But 207 million people, on the other hand, makes everybody look at Pakistan at least twice. We're the 6th largest population, and the one thing that forces multinationals, others, to look at population is our potential customer base. I was on the phone this morning with Nestlé's MD. I couldn't get through to him for 15 minutes because he was so busy. Right? His numbers are going through the roof. Why? Because of this population. Who's following Nestlé into this country? P&G. Unilever's reinventing itself. And now, Japanese food companies are coming in. So Pakistan quietly is a huge attraction for a lot of the multinationals who need a destination to sell their goods. Where are they going to sell their goods? In Switzerland? 8 million people? In Czechoslovakia? Less than 20 million people? In France? Less than 60 million people? And dwindling? Where are these companies going to go? They are forced to look at Pakistan. Now, Pakistan, because it's a tale of two cities, needs to position itself a little bit more differently, knowing what's happening in the world. So what's happening in the world right now is important for you as professionals to grasp as you look at an opportunity. So in '91, when I first came here and I was brainwashed by American professors, it was the Washington Consensus. There should be no trade barriers. Everything should be zero. Developing countries need to bring their tariffs down. Everybody needs to join the WTO. Negotiate your way through multilateralism. Okay? So in those days, the word FTA, nobody had even heard of. What's an FTA? What's a PTA? So the world, as such, was heading towards, borderless, barrierless. And Yugoslavia war had just finished, so there was hope. Okay, people can actually somehow survive while being different. So you don't really need borders. Especially for trade, you don't need them. That Washington consensus also said, okay, developing countries, if they have current account deficits, should devalue their currencies so that there's a balance between exports and imports. And if there's a budget deficit, they should move away from custom duties and go towards sales tax, and sales tax is the tax of the future. That was the Washington consensus. And if there is a gap in budget deficit, and if there's a gap in trade deficit, then these IFIs globally will step in as long as you have good governance at your decision-making level. And that's what I was told was the panacea for the world. Then many things happened. More wars broke out than was ever anticipated. Iraq war happened, Afghanistan war happened, 9/11 happened. So suddenly the world, from being this open-minded, borderless society, started putting up borders again. The EU was the first one to put up borders, saying no to immigration. But internal immigration, okay. White's okay, black's not so good. It's the reality. So people were questioning themselves. It wasn't as if in Europe everybody was negative. There was a debate. What kind of people do we want in our labor pool? And what did countries like Pakistan have to offer? Labor. So what did we want in exchange for all of this? We wanted flexible labor markets globally. If we were going to have deficits, then at least our labor should be able to go and be employed. And to some degree, we succeeded. It wasn't a promise that wasn't, totally unfulfilled. 10 million Pakistanis right now earn their living in this global village. So the Washington Consensus of 91 to 2018 had hits and misses, but for us, the biggest hit was that our professional class, our labor class, 10 million of them earn money and incomes from this policy. So we should embrace that. The world should be borderless for our advantage, which is our population and skilled labor. $20 billion official money, another 10 billion probably unofficial money, 30 billion is our huge competitive advantage as a country that we are receiving, which is creating the boom behind consumerisms and motorcycle sales and Nestle sales. Because the money, $30 billion that comes in, invariably comes in as spent on necessity goods, consumption, or at best, plaza culture. Somebody who's employed and suddenly is unemployed, gets some money, puts up a shop. So you've got a guy who was first working in some government department or maybe working for you, now suddenly he has a shop, or two, or three. So he's become a wholesaler, retailer. And he enjoys that more than working for you and me, because he's got empowerment. So this $30 billion a year, or at least 20 to 30, imagine in the last 10 years, that's $300 billion earned abroad, spent in Pakistan. So when people ask, where is this real estate boom coming from? Where are the cement sales coming from? A bigger role than the PSDP is the 10 million people employed abroad, sending money home through the Washington Consensus. But things are changing. Suddenly the world is closing down on us. So we've got trade wars. So suddenly it's not just a trade war between South and South, which was before the case. Pakistan and India fight for markets, fight for access. Pakistan and China are competitors. We fight for access in the developed markets. Pakistan and Vietnam are competitors. Pakistan and Indonesia are competitors. Pakistan and Bangladesh are competitors. We are competing for market access in these so-called developed markets. So this trade war is not necessarily just at our level. Suddenly, it's at the bigger level. And you know. So Trumpism, in some ways, is, echoing the call of the developing countries. While people criticize Trump, a lot of developing countries are saying, see, that's what we've been saying. It's unfair. So people are latching on to Trumpism who've not had it so good, who've got big current account deficits. So suddenly, having a $3 billion current account monthly deficit, it kind of rings true to even us, right? Why is it that others are able to export much more than we're able to export? So trade wars, China, US, is going to redefine the Washington consensus. So now people don't talk about Washington consensus, they talk about Trumpism. But what is Trumpism? Trumpism is, frankly, a call to protectionism. Again, protectionism of what? My country's interests, my jobs, my consumer access. Why should I give you access to my market if I don't have access to your market? Why should I allow cheap Chinese goods to be sold to my customers when my cars have duty on in your market? So this emotional appeal rings true to a lot of people in the US. In fact, it also rings true for a lot of people in Europe. And the developing world is watching this. So who else is doing this? Mr. Modi is doing this. Mr. Modi says, no, I don't want this. I want Make in India. And guess what? The Thais are also saying this now. The Vietnamese are saying this now. They're all saying, everywhere you go, they are saying, make in Thailand, make in Malaysia, make in Indonesia. So this trend is a big trend that's happening, but Pakistan is kind of a bystander right now because we don't have the intellectual capital at the moment to get into this debate. And this is an important defining moment for the next 20 years, how we position ourselves. And nationalism is back on the agenda. Who is an American? Suddenly people are asking. It used to be an American was the best of the world. And that's why America was amazing. Everyone's most intelligent, hardworking, entrepreneurial person is represented in America. Whether you are from Africa, whether you're from South America, you proudly used to say, I'm an American. Whether you're a Pakistani doctor, or an Indian dentist, or a Chinese scientist, I'm an American. America was the only country in the world that allowed every nationality, every religion's brilliance to come in easily. And even after 9/11, this kept happening. 9/11, for a year or two, you had this. But now, the election of Mr. Trump has changed America's view on who is an American. And it's a debate. It's not a critique. It's a debate. He's asking this question, and more than 50% are saying, no, there is a definition of American, and it is XYZ. Now that, again, is sending shockwaves through the world. So people are following. So 4 or 5 European countries followed this and went more right-wing. And suddenly, people are pointing out, how come the Japanese don't invite any non-Japanese into their country? How come the Chinese don't invite any non-Chinese into the country? Why is it that Chinese are given visa on arrival, and Pakistanis, it takes them 90 days to even get a look at a counselor in the Chinese embassy? People are asking these questions. Why does it take us one way and get nothing in reciprocity? Nationalism is on the rise. And Pakistan out of the three, of course, nationalism is the most easy one to latch on to. We're emotional people. We're Muslims, generally. And being part of the Indus Valley civilization, we are typically considered to be some of the smartest people in the world, but we're also considered to be some of the most emotional people in the world. All you have to do is switch on TV from 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock, and you'll see 75 shows on TV, which are pure entertainment. What is that in entertainment? It is political critique. No longer people watch dramas and sports between 7 and 11. They actually sit down and very wholeheartedly watch this impassionate sort of debate going on our politics. We're emotional people. And the channel that does the most nationalism wins, gets the ads, gets the eyeballs. But is that how a nation should be balancing itself? Well, those are the trends. But what is happening at the same time is the world is right now turning into a bipolar world. And the bipolar world is in two segments. This is my opinion. It is, on the one hand, the EU and US value system, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant value system, binds them together. They have a value system that links them to each other through commerce, through other various things. Sorry. Hello? And Japan and India are latching on to this kind of commercial, economic view of the world together. So, foreign policy, this is a bloc. Commercial policy, this is becoming a bloc. Strategic policy, it's a bloc. And it's emerging. And on the other hand is another bloc, which is China working with the so-called impoverished states. So Africa is where they started. Then Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, all these places where the US, EU left a vacuum, the Chinese went in. And this bloc of China, Africa, and now what I would call non-India Asia is being wrapped around the view of China. And there's a reason for it. It's an economic reason rather than a reason to do with any other emotional attachment. Economic and in some cases strategic, certainly in the case of Pakistan. But culturally we are very different people, which is not the case with US, EU, Japan. Culturally they are more aligned with each other. But here, culturally diverse people are being brought into an ambit. So the bipolar world is very important for your profession, us Pakistanis, especially in the commerce world, to understand. Now, what has been the unique strength of Pakistan in the last 70 years? A very, very good friend of mine who served as a finance minister as well as a foreign minister once told me, Pakistan's strategic competitive advantage was it always sat in the middle of this bipolar world. We could get F-16s with the Americans, we could get coalition support funds, we could get development money through the US, and we played that card. We struggled, but we played that card. And on the Chinese front, we always left a room open to be valuable to the rest of the world, to link the world to China. And our value as a country needs to be unique. Can we continue to sit in the middle and straddle and have the best of both worlds? This is a huge question. We go one too far this way, we lose value with the other. We go the other way, we lose value with the first one. And for 70 years, I want you to take away your emotions and think as Pakistanis, think as nationalists for a second, but in a positive way nationalists. What is our national interest? Is it to be one or in the other camp? Or for 70 years, from Quaid-e-Azam to Musharraf, Mr. Zardari, where have we sat? We've sat right in the middle. We've balanced the two bipolar worlds' power. My contention is, let's think about this. I don't know what the right or wrong answer is, but that's what we've been good at for all these years. So why is that important? It's important because our economy and our next generation's hopes depend on how we straddle our commercial, economic interests, strategic interests with our emotions. We straddle so that on this chart, right now on purchasing power, you can see that China is already number 1. And we are somewhere down there at number 24. Not bad. 2016, 200 million people, 24th on purchasing power. Amazing, my view. But the potential is that our next generation, your kids, my kids, we could leave them a country which is in the top 15. If we made the right calls now. If we debated what should our policy be with the US, EU, and with China now? Do we learn from history and from English literature? Or do we learn from 7 to 11 debates on TV? The intelligent or the intelligentsia, you people, the opinion makers, must debate this question. Your profession must debate this question. Pakistan's interest first. So in that context, Mr. Trump is not wrong, Mr. Xi is not wrong, Mr. Modi is not wrong. They're all trying to define their next generation's interest. In this context, commercially. I think I would be a very, very happy grandfather in 2050 if this came true. Top 15. But with it, also see the reality that China will be number 1 and India will be number 2. That irks us. We're uncomfortable with that. But that's the reality. And the last 100 years has not been the reality. The reality is this. Because what does history tell you? History tells you, go to the next one. History tells you that in 1700 to 1870, China and India were number 1 and number 2. In those days, we were part of India. Right? We've carved ourselves out. So has Bangladesh. So has, in some ways, Sri Lanka. Right? So, as civilizations in commerce, history tells us we will be the dominant geographic area of economic activity. Now, how does Pakistan position itself in terms of an evolving mental model to be right at the top of this growth that is going to be presented to the world through Asia? Can Pakistan ride this wave back the way China and India is? My opinion is it's a tale of two cities. There are some good examples and there are some bad examples. But if we can have enough of the glass half full, I think we can ride this model all the way up to 6 to 7% growth per year in terms of GDP for the next 30 years. I think we have the potential. Population is an advantage and a disadvantage, but why can we do it? Because I think our youth is smarter than us. Our youth is brighter than us. Our youth demands transparency of information. In our days, our parents used to shut our eyes, close our ears, don't watch this, don't see this, you're too young for this, you're too old, you need to be older to do this. My 15-year-old knows much more than I ever did as a 15-year-old. My 24-year-old nephew who lives with me is far more informed than all of us in this room, and his friends are even stronger than he is. He's like middle of his group. So our youth is really a lot better than we were. And they are demanding that politicians change. And they're demanding that we don't want to have interaction with the taxman. And they're demanding fake news be shown and real news be shown. and they will demand it more. The only problem with this type of a world and youth is impatience, because everything is reaction. Everything is reaction. There is no innovation. There's no original thought. There's no time to think. So you have a society that reacts every day. I'm sure, aap jitne yahan baithe hue hain, while I have been speaking, at least 25% of you looked at your mobile for a message that came on your phone. Right? I'm not criticizing, but we are reacting. Somebody is throwing information at us, we need to check immediately. And then we get distracted. And then our IQ, we think, we can multitask. But human beings cannot multitask. They're single taskers. The minute you react to something, you become short-termism, you lose interest. That's what our youth's problem is. If we can channelize our youth and give them a little bit more thinking time as a society, sit with them, debate with them, get them off the laptops, they will not only be smart, but they could be innovators. Now that's a challenge, again, as parents, grandparents, for us to do. Now Pakistan's mindset, keeping in mind youth is our advantage to ride this Asian age, what are our current problems that we need to fix so that at 2050 we're as good as the potential shows? So we have some problems and we need to address those. The current problem is, for our policymaker, that service industry has taken off in a wonderful way, right? So service industry is now more than 60% of our GDP. Service industry. Now, what do I mean by service? Is it your service, what you guys as chartered accountants do? No, you're not even 1%. Do I mean insurance industry? No, that's not even 2%. Do I mean banking? No, that's maybe 5%. So what is service industry? Service industry is transportation, retail, and wholesale. Our economy is now dramatically turned towards providing our GDP solely on the basis of a service backup. It's a nation of shopkeepers. It's a nation of truckers, bus owners. Why did that happen? Why did that happen? Because not enough jobs were created in the value-added end of our economy, which is industry and agriculture. Agriculture is not agriculture tilling on the land. Agriculture is value-added. Why did we not convert quinoas into mango juice? Why did we not convert flour into, wholesale biscuits? Why did we not convert sugar into something which is power generated, or sugar into something else, or rice into value-added crackers? Japanese eat crackers, right? Why did we not take our rice and make it into crackers? So agro-industry. That's our foundation. That's what the Thais did. That's what the Vietnamese did. But we created incentives that force people to leave these. So as you focused on industry, you did not, in a cohesive manner, address that where will the revenue come from for FBR. You left FBR in a silo. You told them, this is your target, and you have to accomplish it monthly, quarterly, yearly. So from a revenue point of view, has Mr. Dar done badly? Not really. When he came in, he had 2 trillion in revenue, and now he's going to leave the country with 4 trillion. So he's doubled it in 5 years. Any business would be really happy they doubled in 5 years. But that is in isolation. That target, whether or not we like it, low base, it's got to 4 trillion. But what effect has it had on others? And those who are in industry, the taxation structure around them was so poor that it's better to be in the informal sector than in the formal sector. You know, every chamber I am on, every think tank I attend, they ask me, can you please be on the committee called Ease of Doing Business? Ease of Doing Business. Now, this committee name really irritates me. I say to them, it's too easy to do business in Pakistan for the informal sector. So what are you talking about, ease of doing business? It's too easy to do business in Pakistan. Stay out of the tax net, cheat, copy, because that's how the incentives have been placed. So we need a rebalancing of our economy so that by the time we're at 2050, 32 years should be enough time for us to restructure our economy. Now, service economy cannot give you employment. It's a mom and pop show. Do char nephews, panch, chhe professionals, and that's what it's all about. And a load of truckers, if you're in the trucking business from Miyawali, right? Construction, that's what it is. It's a good industry, but we've got laborers, a nation of laborers sitting in UAE, not here. If you've got industry, you've got too easy to do business for the informal sector, plus FTAs, which are poorly negotiated. Everybody knows that. Even Commerce Minister, Commerce Secretary, and the Joint Secretary in Commerce, who's a very competent guy, admits, okay, we didn't have the capacity. We just signed it because it was part of IMF conditions or World Bank conditions, and Jeffrey Sachs and Michael Porter said this is the way to do it, so we just signed off on it. We didn't have capacity. Your best civil servants take sabbaticals when they find it's the wrong minister in charge of their ministry. They go away for 3 years. And guess where they're employed? They're actually employed at World Bank, DFID, IMF in those 3 years as consultants because they're bright. But you don't want to use their thoughts. And in the agriculture sector, of course the issue is water. Of course it's water. The name India comes from the river Indus. A vast continent of 2 billion people was named after this great river called Indus. Indus is the life of this country, the source of our IQ, the backup of our commercial sense, our entrepreneurship, our excellence. Human being actually migrated to the Indus area because the climate was nice, resources were available, and hence our IQ developed stronger, faster than others. This is my contention. I'm not a doctor, but that's my experience. So when somebody says Pakistanis are the 4th brightest people in the world in terms of IQ, this WhatsApp that's going down, I actually write back and say, I probably agree. So this water, this river, has to be looked after. It's the source of our life. It's the source of our future. Let's dam it where we need to. Let's utilize that water where we need to. And let's fill our ministries of water and power and agriculture with water experts rather than farmers. Because agriculture future is based around water. So what's happened in Pakistan? So I'm an industrialist. I hope most of you people here have had some exposure to industry. So I'm pro-industry. Right? So I think Pakistan has the potential to create a competitive advantage. I'm not an economist, and I do not believe fully in the theory of comparative advantage. I'm a businessman, I'm a strategist. I believe competitive advantages are created. And Pakistan has the natural resources, human resources, and the entrepreneurship to create competitive advantage. In our decade of development, 60s, everybody talks about it still. That was our foundation. So we've done it once. What went wrong? I think we just didn't have good enough regulation that tempted the politician to turn this wealth being created in the private sector back to the public sector. So what was missing in that decade of development was regulation. And human beings tend to take advantage whenever there is limited or no regulation. And the business of the state is to ensure that there is fairness and there is public good for the society. So where the businessmen, which I belong to, fight against regulation, I don't fight against regulation. I say there should be regulation, fair regulation, enough regulation. Not over the top. So the debate yesterday and day before in the Congress in the US, the key question being posed to Facebook is, do you want to be self-regulated? Or don't you think we should regulate you a little so that the consumer is protected, privacy is protected, and you have a business model? And Mr. Zuckerberg's answer yesterday was, I am not against regulation, Senator. Because it's a balance. So as participants in this industrial rebirth, rejuvenation, it's part of the cost of doing business to have this balance. In the 70s, when we went overboard the other way, over-regulated, price controls, cost controls, production controls, we learned that it can go the other way. Initial 2-3 years, very good in the public sector. Great industries foundation was created, fertilizer industry, cement industry. But the nature of the beast is that if there is no incentive alignment, private wealth creation opportunity, then there will be corruption, there will be inefficiency in the public state. So the debate globally, whether it's Russia, whether it was China, was no. This whole thing in the public sector doesn't work either. So we need a balance. Now that balance we've been trying to be at from 1990. So for the last 20 years, there's no debate what we need to do. The gap is capacity of our politician, capacity of our civil servant, and the inability of our business community to be able to bridge the gap that is created in a phase of development. Not enough revenue generation, so IFIs come in. Not enough exports, so we need balance of payment support. So we have been shackled over the last 28 years in one program after the other, which has led us to have $80 billion in foreign debt as we stand. And another $100 billion in domestic debt. So we are a debt-based economy over the last decade, 2 decades. $180 billion we owe. It'll be $200 billion by the time we're done in June. Is it bad? No. As long as it is used properly. As long as it leads to development. But if you look at ourselves compared to our competitors, India and Indonesia, all this borrowing has led to the industrial sector squeezing down. So industrial sector as of today is only 20% in our economy. Services sector 60%. Agriculture 20%. These figures we know. In fact, the last 2.5 decades, we've had deindustrialization in terms of percentage. Now, we've had industrialization, of course. Cement is more than it was before, textiles more than it was. But as a percentage in the economy, we're on a decline. And why, while we've been doing industrialization, is this a correlation? Maybe, maybe not. Why don't you guys debate it? Reality is, while we've been deindustrializing, we've also been signing FTAs. So actually, it's exactly the wrong thing to do if industrialization line doesn't go up. So, what should it have been? So if you look at China, after China joined the WTO, its national interest has been aided to an enormous level by the capacity of its civil servants. They have negotiated with every country in the interest of their economy, and it negotiated well. In the case of Pakistan also, they negotiated well. They're our friends. Please don't doubt that I'm here saying, okay, I'm somehow, I have a bias against them or whatever. I don't. But with friends, you need to negotiate even harder. Currently, one of our best friends is Turkey. The Secretary of Commerce and Joint Secretary of Commerce tell me they are ruthless. They want to take the cake and eat it. I mean, brotherly love left them at the border at Istanbul. When they're in the FTA, they are simply trying to fool us, negotiate with us in the interest of their textile industry, their auto industry, their leather industry. So, you negotiate with friends. You don't just sit idle and say, hey, you know what, we're such great friends, have whatever you want. So, what is the lesson? The lesson is, whatever you negotiate, if you have used after the FTA only 5% of the things you negotiated, and only 5% of those lines you were able to export on, and what you gave up, 57% China used of the lines they negotiated. Now, critics will say, Shirazi Saab, you're such a cynic, we have no exportable surplus. Of course we have exportable surplus. Of course we do. I just talked to a textile chap next to me. He just told me we devalued by 6%. Our textiles are up by 30% or something. Now, I'm not saying devaluation led to that. We have exportable surplus. But you've got to buy market access. So this slide alone tells a layman like me, okay, it was poorly negotiated tariff lines. So am I blaming China? No. I want to be China. I want our guys to be China. Why couldn't this graph be the other way around, where we are 57% and they had 5% of our lines? We're the poorer country. They are the bigger country. So where's this big brothership in trade? Mexico negotiated a big brothership with the US when they did NAFTA. Canada negotiated a big brothership with the US when they did NAFTA. Why did we not do it? This is our NAFTA. The winner in NAFTA is Canada and Mexico. And the bigger nation doesn't mind it. Trust me, the Chinese don't mind if this gap was the other way around, if we had negotiated it well. They're just saying you don't have anything. But I think we do have anything. So what's the solution in this environment? I think FTA is a misused word. It should be preferential trade agreements, where we want preferred access and we'll only give you preferred access. We're not going to give you FTAs. We're going to give you PTAs. And we'll see how it goes. We're not going to give you everything on a silver platter. Number two, there needs to be a balance. If we are going to give you access to our market, we want your technical know-how. We cannot just give you everything on a platter, and that's what the US and Mr. Trump are saying, right? Is it wrong? I'm not a fan of Mr. Trump, but I just like whoever is advising him how to negotiate. I like his negotiation on commerce. He's putting pressure in terms of getting it his way. We need to negotiate. And so far, our FTAs are government to government, G to G. They are business to our consumer. So we are giving access to our consumer. It needs to change. It needs to be from government to government to government, to business to business. And giving our consumer so easily, I think, is wrong. We need to do it through a better negotiated business to business. Does the Commerce Ministry want to do it? Yes. But they need our know-how. We say yes one day, the next day we listen to, one or two chambers and we go and say no. Why don't we do our homework better so we help them negotiate better? They're our friends, they're not our enemies. But let's educate them, support them on this. Now, CPEC, by the way, President Sahab, I've been told I need to stop, so if I'm overrunning, yep. So 5-10 minutes. Is that okay? You want me off? Yeah. Okay, fine. So let me just finish it off by showing you that in CPEC, the issue is what? For the next decade, we have a $100 billion shortage in capital to finance our economy. That's a reality. Agar aaj debt is 80 billion, we need another 100 billion. That's true. We'll need this. How do we take this is important. So it is productive. So bottom line, this gap we thought CPEC will fill. Reality is CPEC loans are debt. They are not Europe's Marshall Plan, which are grants. Reality is, this 100 billion, by being straddled between the two bipolar worlds, we need some in debt, but we do need grants. So we need to position our country's future. We need to leverage it better. 100 billion through debt is not sustainable. A blend of Marshall and CPEC debt is sustainable. That's the reality. Reality is the road network is great. Reality is FDI is great. But we're not getting enough FDI. We're getting debt. We're not getting equity. And reality is we're not exporting, where we have exportable surplus in leather goods, light engineering, textile, and agricultural goods. And rightly so, the next phase of FTA with China is being hardened. We need this. Is Pakistan prepared for disruption? Question mark. Negative experiences. Every time exchange rate happens, we have a disruption. Every time SOE's management changes, we have disruption. Every time textile global policy changes, we have disruption. And we go down rather than up. Now comes technology and robotics. As we are deindustrializing, robotics is coming into service industry and industry. So where will people be employed? Key is we have some positive experiences. Telecom changed. It was a disruption, but a lot of people got absorbed in IT and banking. Mobility. Right now, the biggest employer is Uber and Careem. Ravi, Suzuki car is booming because Uber guys are using it. Energy, suddenly solar. We've been paying energy through the roof, and this disruption is coming, and solar and cheaper energies. So there is hope that we can reduce our cost of doing business. But reality is, this is a McKinsey report, that every industry will be disrupted. So in this, what is the Pakistan story? What is the story that you guys are ready for? So while all this potential is there, the chartered accountant and your profession needs to challenge, how do we adjust? Reality is, we've had some positive experiences. Reality is, we've had some negative experiences. I am optimistic, again, because of our youth. Are you as professionals ready? I'm going to leave you with some thoughts. You read it, I hear it, I experience it. What's happened in the last 10 years? And did you predict it? Nokia and Ericsson had 70% of the mobile phone market. Did you predict that Apple and the Chinese will have 90% and these two will not be in this business? Honda and Toyota currently are behemoths in Pakistan. Suzuki. Will they be in 10 years' time? Or will somebody else take them over? Especially EV. If EV comes in. Anybody know the secret? Let me know. It'll help me. But these people are coming into the spaces of Nokia, Ericsson, Honda, Toyota. Google is in the car industry now. Uber is taking away the car industry share. And what's happened in our tastes and environment? Who could have believed in 91 that water can be sold for 20 rupees or 30 rupees? We thought water was free. Who would have thought sugar would be taxed like tobacco in Europe? But that's happening. So industries are going to change. So as professionals, advisors, my view to you is, are you ready? The Pakistan story, what's happening regionally, what's happening in our economy, and what's happening technically. Last, I will say, as we leave and become grandparents, again I'll take Charles Dickens, which is, it is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. If you leave this world and you've done that and you have no regrets, then perhaps Pakistan in 2050 for the next generation will be a far, far better place than the one we have now. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Thank you to your profession for allowing me that platform.
I think that was a fantastic speech overall, and that's opened our eyes to so many ideas. And I think the one takeaway in terms of the entire session, evolving the mental model, is the element of nationalism. I think if everybody in this hall and those who are hearing this can actually bring that back in, that will give you so many more ideas to build Pakistan further. Thank you so much. I think you really set the tone for our conference and for many more to come. Can I please request Mr. Riaz A. Rahman Chamdiya to come up on stage and present a memento to our keynote speaker, Mr. Saqib Shirazi. Thank you so much once again, and I'm sure many of us would like to go back and read the presentation again.